Yeah, this was my drink that I paired with my book.
Beautiful.
I took this assignment seriously.
You should. You
I
should. It's a
thought
very. I mean,
I thought, do I want to get the book first and pair the drink, or do I want to find the drink first and then pair the book?
it's a question. Save that for the show too,
That's
because
a
it
chicken. That's a chicken or the egg dilemma, if
yes,
I've ever
yes.
heard one.
You can go either way. Generally speaking, um, doing the drink first and finding the book is the cheaper way to go about it, rather than cycling through all these alcoholic beverages trying to find the right thing. So you're like, this is what I'm drinking because it's what I bought. Now, what do I want to, watch, read, what have you with it? And then that winds up being just a much gentler on your wallet than, and you usually have a bookshelf already full of stuff. I mean, you don't want to see my wine rack. I'm actually pretty flush at this point. So I also, my wine rack is essentially the wine equivalent of what's behind me via books and comics right now. I mean, it's just like this racks and racks and racks and a nice little medley. So, but I don't want to open a whole bunch of shit all at once, because then that's also a waste. So you usually go with the piece of entertainment first, and then you move on to other things. But you can go either way about it.
I chose a beer because I'm more of a beer guy.
I saw that, and that is perfectly. I mean,
I do like wine, but I know nothing about it. So,
which is what most people are going to be. Which is, we're okay with that. We're here to, it's a fun little thing. I love pairing wine with everything that I wind up reading, and half the time that's how I choose what I'm going to read on any given night. Is I'm like, well, what the hell am I drinking? And like, I like this idea of putting it together to where there's a match happening. This actually all came about. This is getting a little ahead of ourselves because we have not posted this on Substack yet, but this all came about because they did a big study on wine and music pairing. And they found out, they actually did like controlled studies, and they discovered that people, when given selections of styles of music and then a limited selection of wine, there wasn't just like, you can pick anything and then everyone chose the same thing, but they were like, look, here's like wildly different styles of wine, and here's a selection of music. What do you like drinking when you're listening to this, and what makes listening to this feel good to you? And pretty much across the board, everyone picked the same damn thing. And they just did it time after time after time. There was almost no discrepancy between them. So we read that study, we read the book that was written on that, and we're like, if that works with music, there's probably something there for other things too. And it's like, is it necessary? God, no. But can it maybe enhance your experience a little bit by, it's just like, what mood are you in, kind of a thing. And it's like, are you in the mood to watch a horror movie? Are you in the mood to watch a rom-com? Are you in the mood to read a piece of classic literature, or do you need something pulpy and fun and super fast? And, that dictates what it is you actually want to, and whether it's going to feel good trying to consume that thing at that time.
One of my favorite comic writers is Alan Moore. I'm a big Alan Moore fan, and the book I chose is by Alan Moore. And when he writes comics, he's writing comics. He's not writing for a movie. He's not writing for
right.
something else.
Right.
So I read a quote from him somewhere. He's like, I write books for people to make a nice warm cup of hot chocolate, sit by an open fire in a robe in their favorite sofa, and just read the book. And that's what I was thinking of. Like, he's all about a mood guy. When you read, it's about the mood. You don't read on the train, like in between, like on your way to work. Or
I mean, sometimes depending on where you are in life, sometimes that's the time you have to read, and you don't have a choice. But yeah,
with 3 kids, I definitely read all the time. I used to walk my kids to school and then read on the walk back.
Right.
So I definitely know that. But like I understand where he's coming from when he's like, yeah, when you're in a book that you love, you can set a great mood for it. And
here's his massive Alan Moore Jerusalem. I don't know if you've seen this mother effer.
I never even heard of Jerusalem. What is it?
It is a 1,250 page book, hardcover, and you can see the print ain't big either. It's nice.
It's a novel.
It's a novel. It's a novel. And he published this maybe about 5-ish years, 2016. So about 6-7 years ago. And I have not read it yet, but it like I bought it when it first came out because I'm like, you know what? This is like his novel wise, it's kind of his opus. Like it's his everything in the kitchen sink.
I love writing. I don't know if I could put that much effort into writing something that long.
Well, we're going to talk about that. So, we're is Dallas there? I think he is. Here he
Finally.
comes. Hello.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey.
Good to
Well,
see you.
Dallas
Good to
meet
see
Frank.
you.
Frank meet Dallas. Here we
How's
are.
it going, Frank?
Good. How are you doing? I heard that you have a little bit of a dilemma going on over there, or a problem.
Yes.
I told him you're on the
yes.
East Coast and you were flying for family reasons. That's all.
Yeah.
Didn't reveal the dirty secrets, but I revealed the broad strokes.
I got enough of it to send my best wishes. Whatever.
No, sounds good. What's going on?
Well, not too much. We were kind of doing preliminaries, but I also think we've kind of launched into it at this point. We're just going, we're recording. So you know what? But let me take a moment because you haven't been properly introduced to the listeners / viewers of this. So welcome to another Wine and Comics pairing show. We have a very special guest with us tonight. I see last time I pointed the wrong way. Here we go. To Frank Martin, who is one of the most prolific comic book writers I think I've stumbled across on the indie comic scene. When we started talking about him coming on the show, one of the things I was like, I had to go look it up. I'm like, I don't even know how many Kickstarters of yours I've backed, but it's a lot. And it turns out, I still don't have an exact count, but it's like the 3 Polar Paradoxes that you've done to date, the 2 Last Homicides, the 2 Pipe Cleaners, the Truce one shot that you put out. The only one I think I missed is the Macabre Hotel, or Hotel Macabre, if I'm saying that right. And I'm kicking myself a little bit for missing that because I realized that was published by CEX or Comics Experience. And they have turned into, I think at the time you were running that Macabre, is it Macabre Hotel or Hotel Macabre? Motel Macabre.
It's the Macabre Motel.
The Macabre Motel. There we go. So you can tell it's the one I didn't get. I'm struggling to remember the title. But at the time, it was a one shot. I think it was one of those times where I was like clawing back all the Kickstarters. I was like, I'm doing too much. I need to slow down. And so a lot of these, it was one of those periods where I'm just like, no more. I need to stop. Look at this bookshelf. I don't have the space. I need to save the money. Let's stop for a minute. So I missed that one, but CEX has since become one of my, I'm honestly like top 5 indie publishers right now. I've been loving everything they greenlight. Now on that topic of Comics Experience, I know that a lot of these books they've been putting out were books that went through, it was like a forum or a class or something like that they also ran. Did they find you that way, or did you just submit kind of cold turkey to them?
So the way Comics Experience worked is they've worked with other publishers in the past. First IDW, and then SourcePoint, and then they finally said, you know what, we've learned enough of the ropes here where we can just start our own publisher line.
Gotcha.
And the general rule is they have open submissions, and you have to have some connection to the larger Comics Experience course. You either take a course, you're part of the workshop that they have, and that's kind of what they want to bridge. It's not like you take a Comics Experience course and then you're all of a sudden going to get a book published. It doesn't work.
Right.
I
think what I heard is they're open. They're willing to take a look at your submission. Yes. Like the door is open because you did that. Yeah.
Submissions are only open for people that have been part of the program. Gotcha. And they do that for a number of reasons. They want to showcase, look, these are people that have been a part of our classes and this is what they put out. It's a little form of advertising. And what's awesome is that I've taken a lettering class, and their lettering class there completely changed the way I put comics together. And cool. So I'm not enrolled there at all right now. I haven't taken any courses. I'm not on the workshop, but since I've taken that lettering class and the lettering is in every single one of my books, I can now pitch them any of the books that I letter. So because I learned that trait, that skill from them. So they're great over there. Andy Schmidt's the publisher. And what I've loved about Andy is I've submitted a bunch of books to him, and he's passed on them, but he's always provided me great feedback. It's never a form rejection.
Right.
I got to reject. I got let go from one of my freelance writing gigs the same day he sent me a rejection, and his rejection made me happy because his rejection uplifted my day. So because he had so many nice things to say, and he makes creators understand why things get rejected. A lot of times people just think it's not good enough. That's why they didn't pick it. There's so many other factors that are involved, and he really does a great job of laying that out. So I appreciate it. Yeah,
absolutely. The first, one of the comics that we featured on a very early episode of the show was, if I'm gonna remember, Stud in the Bloodblade.
And that was their first one, I think. That was
I think it was too. I said that on the show, and then I wasn't sure, and I was like, maybe I'm just not like ignorant of what they've done. But from what I can tell, this was their first stab at them under their own, CEX brand, actually, like not going through. I didn't realize they were going through places like IDW or what have you. But that I think was my favorite comic of 2022, where it was just like, I found it, I read it, I was just like, this thing should be a one-note parody. And it just wound up being so much more than that. And it's like, 3 48-page, it's essentially like a 6-issue miniseries, even though they published it as 3 giant-sized issues. And I love the creativity. I love the themes. It was intelligent while also being authentically funny, while also being authentically just so many ideas. All like, if someone had pitched me that, I would be like, how the hell are you going to put all those things together? That doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm like, I think I need to see the script now to know if this is going to work, but it worked on every level. So, and since then I've been getting all the CEX books as they've been coming out, and just, all of them are above average at the very least. Like, they seem to know whatever their taste is my taste, is what this seems to be. So the fact that they published like the one goddamn comic of yours I passed on somehow while it was coming out, I'm like, of course I did. Because if I was going to just pick one out of the haystack and be like, oh, skip on that one, you'll come back the next time, it had to be the one that then the publisher I now think is the greatest thing ever actually loved and published. So that is one that I'm going to get on shortly after we record this, where it's like, I got to go find a copy and make sure that I grab one. If you have a preferred way for me to buy a copy, let me know. But if not, I'll try and get it direct from CEX or something of that nature.
Yeah, we love those tips.
Yes. Or like whatever benefits. See, I'm assuming buying direct from them would benefit them the most.
They don't have any. They sold out. They sold out their print run, which I was pleasantly excited about. But they, but even they were like, Frank, we want to submit your book to awards. We literally don't have a single copy. Do you have? So
wow.
No, it was a.
They sell it digitally though. Maybe if I look for it digital, I could probably find a copy.
Digital is always great. Save that shelf space.
Absolutely. Well, honestly, I get like as this is all for show, but it is loaded. Like, I buy physical very sparingly now. It's got to be like the ultimate omnibus hardcover special. There will never be a more ultimate edition anymore for me to get something physical, because I'm out of space. So it has to be something that is so special as a physical edition. I'll deal with the space issue, but when it comes to single issues or very small, like, trade paperbacks, it's getting to the point where I'm just like, they're in stacks on my floor. I have to stop. I have to slow down. Yeah. I'm
a big library guy. I had the same problem. I was buying everything, and then I loved reading, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And then I'm like, you could go to the library and they just let you take books. You don't have to do anything. All you need is a piece of plastic, and they
give them back. Right. It's basically you're getting the book and taking it to the used bookstore after in one place. Right. It's like that's the circle of life.
I could
for
take
that book.
It, get rid of it, and I could take more. All I have to do is promise to bring it back, and they give me whatever I want.
Right. 100%. I've actually similarly, I think on the digital side, I found a lot of love doing things like Kindle Unlimited, the Comixology Unlimited, things where it's like, which allows you to borrow, what the books that it's funny. They even set it up like a library where it's like you borrow, and then you can only have so many books out at a time. You can't just borrow an entire massive collection and just leave it on their drive. It's like you get like 8 to 10, and then after that they're like, you need to read some of these, give them back, and then you can take the next one, kind of a thing. So it's interesting how they did that, very similar to a library. But yeah, libraries always important, both for movies, both for books, for comics. They actually loan all of those things out online, digitally, as well as physically in the stores, or shouldn't call it a store, in the library itself. I think the LA library also has like the entire used bookstore thing at the bottom, where it's sort of like, this is the area where we need to get rid of even of our copies to make space for the new copies coming in. So you can come get these for a piece, get these for a very small amount of money, $1, $2, $3. And you can find some real, like, things you've never heard of, hidden gems. It's amazing. Yeah. People forget about libraries, I think. We're just in that digital age.
We are indeed.
Yeah. All right. So, well, let's get into Sex Night, which is the book of yours that we're actually here for. And your Kickstarter, it started yesterday. Yeah. You launched it?
Yes.
It did. How was day one?
Day one wasn't bad. We got over 50%.
Wow.
I think we're at 60 something now. I'm not sure on the numbers, but moving all along. It's the first couple days, so I'm feeling pretty good, and it's just a matter of getting there.
Good. I listened to a podcast with you. It was a couple years back. I think like 2020. It was when Pipe Cleaners Kickstarter was going on. And I remember you were interviewed and this guy asked you, so one thing that I've always been really intrigued by with you is I said you were prolific, right? And you dabble in but not just prolific in terms of like quantity of output, but range of output, like all the mini genres. Like every single book you seem to do, you almost unless it's the same series you're going back to, like a sequel or the natural continuation, like it is a two-parter, so here's part two, and now you're on to the official second story of Polar Paradox, for instance. But unless you're doing that, the next comic that comes out is always something that is like not anything like the comics I've already gotten from you and read. It's always some genre where I'm like, this is what this guy likes to do. This is really, and personally, I really appreciate that. I appreciate, the Quentin Tarantinos of the world, the people who are like, this is what I do. You know what you're getting. You're here. I'm never, it's always going to be variations on this theme. I'm not really going to give you a non-Quentin Tarantino movie. That's never something you're going to get. I'm never going to really push those boundaries.
Is that something you do because you're easily bored with your creations, or
I think I tend to write what I like, and I like a lot of stuff. So that's pretty much what the answer is. It's not that I'm like, I get bored with this and I want to move on to something else. It's that I like monsters, and I like romance, and I like comedy, and I like sci-fi, and I like fairy tales. So it's like, I just want to touch upon all these things. And if I've done a vampire story, I'm not going to go back and do another vampire story. I mean, I think that's kind of like a waste. I've already done that. I've already put my spin on it. There's so many other things I could put my spin on. I want to kind of touch them all.
Yeah.
Good deal.
And that's something that, I mean, it's kind of sucks for branding. Because
it's awful for branding. When I was when I was up and coming and kind of learning to do this whole Kickstarter thing, that's not the advice that they give people at all.
Right.
It's find a niche.
Right.
And then build an audience around that niche.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
If people like buying something, give them more of that thing to buy.
Right.
And I'm like, but I don't care what people want to buy. I want to give them something. Amen. They buy it anyway.
We're from the same tribe.
I'm pretty selfish in that regard.
Yeah, me too.
Life has to be a give and take between trying to search out that success and making yourself happy. And and even though I might lose something, I think like you, I do gain something, because whenever I put something out, I'm not phoning it in. I'm doing something specific for this reason, and I'm going to give it my all.
Right. Something completely different. And as they say, you got to be in love with the process more than the result. Right. And that's what keeps you coming back to do it again and again and again. And if it is something where, even if you did find that niche, because you took the advice of everyone who gave you that advice, and you were like, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm known for, with an occasional, venture out into something else to see how it does and see if your audience follows you. But if your audience knows you as giving them one specific thing, like that gets harder and harder and harder to do as time goes on. And kind of like me, how even when you're doing all these many things, every once in a while, I have to skip one creator's book because I'm just like, I love so much. I love so many creators. I love so many books, and I have to slow myself down sometimes. And that necessarily means that I can't get everything by everyone all the time. And you're giving people that easy out when you're like, this is what you're really here for. I'm going to try something new. And that's when most of your audience says, well, I'm going to pass. I'm going to wait till you come back to the thing that I know you do.
I that wasn't by design, by the way. There was never a purpose like 5 years from now, I'm going to have all these titles spanning all these genres. It was kind of just like, I kind of just chased what I wanted to chase. And when I look back, I'm like, I did a lot of different stuff. So it's kind of like the dog that chases after the squirrel, and then he turns around and doesn't realize where he is. I had no idea where I wound up, how I got here. I just kind of, I chased a story after a story. And then
as a reader, from a reader POV, I don't know when exactly I finally figured out who you were and like figured out this was all you. But every time, Kickstarter, if you back someone before, they send you, they're like, hey, back another project by so-and-so. And I'd look at the project and I'd be like, what did I back of this person? And I'm like, how do I, because this doesn't look like anything I've backed before, or at least, not, and then the name and what I'm looking at they're not going together. It's not ringing a bell. And I'd click, and so then I'd have to click into the project, click on your profile, and then it says, 8 projects created, 10 projects created. I'd click over to them and I'd look at them and I'm like, wait, this is the guy that did what? and so it would take me by surprise over and over and over again. Every new book did not look anything like any of the books I knew you for. So I would just constantly have to be like, educate myself on like who this person was again. Yeah. So, I mean, I get it, because it is the reader has to either A, like that, or B, bother to look at it and be, or not care and just be like, oh yeah, I backed him before, I guess I like him, let's do it. And just go and do it, or just like the concept, whatever it is. But it is really interesting how most creators, because they have a lane that they mostly stick to, when you get that back another project by so-and-so and you look at the style and that, like, it just all comes, like your brain makes the connection and you're like, oh, this person, I remember this style, I remember this art, this kind of story. And for you, I just had to like relearn what this was, like almost every single book, and make I have a folder, because I've pretty much done digital with you, because they've all been like single issues. So I just been doing like, okay, I'm going to do, the digital single issues each time, but I have a folder that's your name, not by series, because I will never, if I just had them in a list somewhere, I would never know they were the same person. And so the only way to know that this is this creator is to have you, the creator, and then dump everything into that, because I could not keep track of it otherwise. So it's an interesting, it's not something that you encounter that often. I wish I did, to be honest. I wish I was better trained.
I tell people that the best way to kind of keep up with me is my mailing list. I send out kind of just overall broadcast emails twice a month. And that's the way I can be in your inbox in a continuous basis, and you can see what I'm working on and know when it's coming. And yeah, that's kind of what they teach people now, is that when people, you need to teach yourself, you're selling yourself, you're selling your face, you're selling your voice, your style. And it's very difficult to be some anonymous writer just pumping out works that people follow all the time. People want to know you and like you and trust you when you put something out, because it's a competition these days.
It is. And I know I'm in a minority as that person who loves those creators that do like never sit still, never stay in any particular line, even if it's like 2 or 3 lanes. It's like you're in like lane 8 or 9 or 10 at this point, and you're like, and it just keeps going. We're gonna circle this back to Sex Night and this podcast that I listen to, because this is where this is going to come in. But even musicians, one of the things I love, musicians that don't stick to a single genre their whole bloody career.
Yeah.
It's like they grow. And it's like, as you grow, even as something like a musician, it's like, do you really want to just be making this exact? And some, maybe their interest really is. It's like, I've never really liked anything more than this, as much as this genre, so I'm going to do this. But then those musicians, and they usually get tons of fan backlash for it because they're like, what the hell is this album? This doesn't sound like I didn't follow you so you could do, like if you're like a British punk band, I did not follow you so you could suddenly do a Motown record. I don't know what this is. And it's like, yeah, but we got into Motown. It's one album. Just let us do it. And they won't. It's like, there's always that insane backlash, but I always love it when someone who is known for one thing, they're like, yeah, but I also like this other thing. And they don't match. The audiences are not the same. None of my fan base is automatically going to like this, except that it's me, and I'm going to do it anyway. And I fucking love that. God, I love that so much. But yeah, circling it. Oh, go ahead.
That's the great thing about Kickstarter, is that it empowers a lot of creators to follow that, whatever that drive is to do the next thing. When you're working with a publisher and you're kind of at their mercy to put the book out, and they're like, yeah, we don't really want you to do that this time. So it's nice to know I can have my own freedom as far as what I put out.
Right. Well, I'm in the Hollywood entertainment industry over here in Los Angeles, and one of the worst things is even people, like, there is a comic writer, a comic writer that again, I listened to a podcast that he did. We're actually reaching out and having him be a guest on the show in the near future. And he is a writer for a comic, the Image comic called Undying Love, that he did with Tom Coker, the artist Tom Coker, quite a few years ago. Now he's doing like Dark Horse graphic novels and things of that nature. But he was talking, Undying Love got optioned for a movie like that. It like came out, and it was a vampire story. And it's the only vampire story this writer ever wanted to write. But then he's been doing these other graphic novels, and the problem is everyone loved Undying Love, but they're like, well, what else you got? And he's like, oh, I got all these other stories. And they're like, no. What other vampire stories do you got?
Yeah.
And he's like, none. This is my vampire story. This is it. This is all I wanted to do. And they're like, nah, you're the vampire guy. And you're like, yeah, but it's a best. And the other stories are like best-selling comics now too. What? I don't like. Why can we not agree that I can write more than one thing? And I think even like the comics industry is bad enough, but like, oh my God, don't even get me started on the movie and TV industries, where it's like, you are the writer that does X, and that is what you're known for. That's what we can sell. You're proven in that territory. You're not proven in any other genre. And it's like, you can't be proven simply as a writer. You can only be proven as a writer of X. It's a problem. It's a problem. But circling this back to Sex Night and this podcast I listened to, this other guy noticed even at the time that he's like, you do a lot of genres. You're like all over the place. You're doing all these things. And he's like, what is the genre that you haven't done that you really want to do? And you mentioned rom-com. And you said, and this was a podcast, like I said, this was like 2 years ago or so, a year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that. And you were like, yeah, the rom-com. He's like, and at the time, maybe at least, you're like, I'm not even especially a fan of comedies or rom-coms, but he's like, I think I wanna find a way to do one of those. And I find it really, and when Sex Night dropped, I was like, you're doing your rom-com.
I have no idea if the two of those, the timing of those two things matched up. You know what? Sex Night's weird. Is it a rom-com?
It's a question. I agree with that.
It's a question because the whole point of a romantic comedy is that there has to be romance, and the whole point of Sex Night is that the romance is gone.
Well, kind of. I would slightly disagree with that. I get entirely what you mean, but as all of us, so I know you've got kids. Are you still a happily married with kids person? Okay, yes. So not I was like, just in case you're a joint custody situation, like let's make sure. But when you're in a long-term relationship, and especially married with kids and things like that, which is the situation in Sex Night with our main couple, it's not like the passion, that young passion fades, right? That youthfulness of a relationship, which we often call romance, but it's not the only form of romance. And while this couple definitely And we're going to get a little bit more without revealing the this is the only thing I'll reveal about the ending, without revealing the details of the multiple endings. We will, I think, the way in which this story works and the way in which you portray this couple is something that anyone who's been in a very long-term relationship can recognize and appreciate. Like for me, I guess most of my long-term relationships were, even when the passion fades, and so you have to work at it. You've got to find those compromises. You've got to find those ways to talk to each other and to like have sex night in a way where it's like it works. And for someone, and at least one of us, for God's sakes, like let's find a way to make it work. And it's like, it's a reality, but it's also the fact that you try at all, the fact that it's willing and that you're comfortable with each other, even though, an outsider like reading the comic was sometimes uncomfortable because it's just like, oh God, yeah, this is what it's like. This is true. And, and it's like, and it is like, oh guys, no, don't be that. You don't be that. No, you don't do that. Like you want to almost talk them through it, even though you've done in that situation, in the heat of the moment, the exact same fucking thing, because that is how it works. Yeah. And that's romance of a kind, I would authentically argue. So which is why I see it as a rom-com. It's like this is 40 movie. Yes. Right.
I've never seen it, but I know what it's, I basically know what it's
the about. Concept behind it. Yeah. The approach. Yeah.
And I agree. There are different forms of romance. And even though there's a lot of contention in this issue, there's a lot of subtext going on here. Mm-hmm. And that subtext is these people love each other. These people like each other. They're trying their best. But you know what? Even though they argue, even though sometimes they end the night on a bad note, they're going to wake up and next to each other and with smiles on their faces. That's
I think to your point, sex sort of transitions from pleasure, fun to it's kind of an ablution. It's health after a certain point, right? It's maintenance, and that's kind of what I get from sex night. It's a beautiful little thing for sure. It definitely is. It's a little peek inside.
They kind of do it because they could fit it into their schedule.
That's exactly.
Yeah, right.
Which is reality, which is absolutely reality.
Fit it into the schedule. And, it's one of those things, it's so easy to let it go and not try, not do it at all. And sometimes there's such a span of time where the timing doesn't work. No one wants to try that after many days, weeks, months, God forbid years, but let's just say months. And, you're like, okay, we need to make it a day. We need to make this happen somehow. Even if it fails, we've got to put the effort in. And honestly, even if it fails, you feel better for having tried. You feel like, I feel like both people are sort of like, oh, because as long as you're both nice about it, as long as you're both understanding about it, then even with the failure, you're like, oh, we tried. We gave it a real shot. We should try more. And of course, the resolution after that, which may or may not take hold, and it might still be months and months before you try again, is we need to try more often. And that will give us better odds of it actually working, one of these times, rather than just this like shot in the dark out of nowhere with everything and all of life going on and you're out of practice, both mentally and physically, to even get into it. And, it's something you got to stay in practice. It is a use it or lose it kind of a thing. I think with sex in long-term relationships, it is absolutely that.
There is a reason there is an entire industry of people trying to make it work that late in life.
Right.
Sex therapists, sex toys, and sex books, and sex everything in between. So there's no like how to do a one-night stand books.
Right.
Although
well, yeah, I was gonna. Are you thinking of the game or something like that?
Just
the game.
Game of something.
I don't know if you're aware of this, Frank. This is a little bit of ancient history, but I think this is kind of like the comics gate of the dating world kind of a thing, where there's a whole underbelly of God, what do they even call there's like a term of what these guys call themselves, and I'm trying to remember. I used to know all the slang for this group, but it's basically a group where it's like there's a way to take home any woman you want whenever you want, kind of a thing, but you have to do it by it's a whole book that was published called The Game, and it's like, here's how you play the game, here's how but I mean, you do treat the other person like
Basically the pickup
absolute
artist
crap, right? I mean,
dynamic.
it's like you cannot picture them as a human being. You cannot be empathetic. You cannot be sympathetic. All of that has to go out the window, and you
Yeah.
must play the game as though it is a goal, it is a prize, and that's what you're doing. But so but it's an underbelly. Like, it's not something society raises up and is like, yes, everyone go get advice to do this. It was more like, oh my God, this exists. We have to, call this out and end it, which it has, I think, as a widespread thing, it has mostly ended. Now it is something that people like the incel crowd, they're much more closed about it, not as banner waving. But there was a time when it was
let's take that reference out of the final edit. We don't want any incels coming.
No. I'm willing to. Let's call out what we like to
those
call
guys
it.
at
It's
bay.
okay. It's okay. But we should take a moment too so Sex Night for the viewers, and because you're going to go check out the Kickstarter, I'm sure that'll give you the bare bones anyways. But the basic setup, it is a married couple with a child. They've just put the child to bed, and this is the night. A little impromptu. It was written in a way to where it's like, this was not really planned. It was just like, oh,
they didn't have it on the calendar.
No, exactly. It was like, we have this moment. One of them is ready to go, and the other one's like, okay. All right, fine, let's do that. And then, of course, I'm sure I can get into it. Let's do it. And the comic is basically their attempt at a sex night. That is the comic. It is hysterical. It is so true to life. If you haven't been in,
the book is 23 pages long. 22 of them take place in one room.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it ends with a multiple choice, choose your own adventure style of an ending where you have, and I'm gonna go a little. I'm not gonna give any spoilers to what those three endings are, but I will go a little more into that because my chosen pairing for this book took those multiple endings into account, and to why I chose. Awesome. And to why I chose. So I chose one to truly pair with my favorite of the three endings, but it's a style of wine where there are variations that could pair with each of those endings. And so we'll talk about that.
I went completely left field.
Okay.
Maybe not even technically a wine.
Ooh. That's exciting.
Maybe not even technically a
wine. You know what, Dallas? That is beyond intriguing. We're going to let's move to the drinks here. Let's move to the wines.
Good choice.
What did you do?
All right. I actually don't have the bottle, but
that's okay.
I chose something called Glühwein, which is a technically a German mulled wine and kombucha combination.
DEW? Do?
No, sorry. Glue, GLU, umlaut H.
With the umlaut. Yeah.
It's kind of fantastic. It's very fresh, but it's also very familiar. It's this curious thing where you take about 2/3 kombucha and 1/3 red wine. Again, mulled wine. You add a few aromatics and you allow it to ferment. And the reason I chose it is because it does. Sex Night does this curious thing where it takes this rather innocuous kind of, Wednesday night impromptu, let's do something less boring than we did last night dynamic, which ends up being sex, and sort of combines it with something that is pretty titillating, which is almost acidic, which is that sort of series of things that go wrong in this sort of in this event. So curiously, the flavor of this wine is really satisfying, even though it doesn't necessarily come together at the end.
Okay.
There's some dissonance.
It's almost like a wine cocktail.
It is almost like a wine spritzer.
I liked how you described it. My wife likes kombucha.
Oh yeah.
You might be.
You're gonna have to see if you can locate some. I have no idea what.
Yeah.
That's something you might want to Google and be like, okay, what kind of shops even carry some glue?
Yeah, Glühwein. It's kind of fantastic. Actually, there's a little bit of the Scovy still in the glass here.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Where'd you do you know where you got I'm not sure if that was something
homemade.
that like
It's homemade.
it's homemade.
Yeah.
Bastard. Okay. So no help there. I will try to find some
Got a great recipe though, and you can buy it other places. So
you can buy it. Look, well, for the behind the scenes extended show notes, we will find a recipe. We will stick them in there for you, as well as I'll try and find, like, I don't know, does Total Wine carry some bottled versions of this? They might. They often do have that sort of spiced German wine type of a thing, especially during the holidays. You can usually find things like this kind of out and about. All right,
Glühwein. It's fantastic. It's effervescent. It's invigorating. It's satisfying. It's dissonance on the end.
You need the invigoration for sex night. Let me tell you, whatever assistance we can get at this point. All right, yeah. So I went a little. So you went way out of left field, and I went super fucking traditional, classical.
Let me see your glass. What you got? Where have you gone? I'm rosé. That
is a rosé. So it's a little bit of a specific. So a little bit of a specific rosé on this one, but my brain immediately, even while I was reading Sex Night the first time, I was like, look, this is going to be like total soccer mom wine. It's got to be on this thing. It's like, this is going to be like Pinot Grigio or a really light, easy Sauvignon Blanc, or in rosé, because there's also the romance element of rosé, right? And rosé is often connected to, like, probably just because it's pink, but it's also, a lot of the styles are, even the styles that are complex, they're easy. It's all kind of easy drinking. So it's always just really nice. It's really celebratory.
Laid back
is a great term for it. And it's got, it's fruity, but if you get the right kinds too, you can get it super fruity and borderline sweet, or you can get sort of the French style, the Provençal style, which is going to be much brighter, crisper, more minerally, and the fruit is much more subdued. It's kind of like just in the back of everything, and it's something that's a bit more something you got to think about a little bit more. But even then, it's so gentle. Like, even the Provençal style, I made it sound like it's difficult, and it's not. It's all just super easy drinking. So in fact, one of the things I was thinking, so you have the 3 multiple endings, and there are really 4 ways that a story like this could end, right? One of the people is frustrated. The other person is frustrated. Both of them are frustrated. Neither of them is frustrated. That's how it can end, like, in broad strokes. The fine-tuned details come to the storytelling, but it's like, when you're trying to have a really good sex night between 2 people, those are your 4 options there. This comic went 3 out of those 4. I'm not going to say which 3. But 2 of them, I would do the Provençal style, where it's like, you're not going to want it to be too heavy, too sweet. You're going to need that little bit of bite to it, that little bit of crispness that comes with it. And I would go, honestly, I don't have a bottle of it here, but like Miraval, right? The Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie winery.
Yeah.
Everyone care. One, you can find it anywhere, like anywhere you live. Everyone carries the Brangelina wine out there, which is Miraval, Miraval, and their Provençal style rosé, honestly, it's fucking good. It's really, really good. I normally would turn my nose up at celebrity wine, but I have to admit, the winery those guys founded, and they predominantly do the rosé. That's like what they're known for. And it is a French style rosé. It comes across exactly that way. Because it's not imported, because it is a fairly large operation that is funded by the Brad. At this point, Angelina has removed herself from it. But Brad is still the owner and proprietor, and he is like, it's good. It's so bloody good. And so that is what I would do for 2 of them. My favorite ending, which is the third, bit more of a wild card ending, if I had to call it something, though also kind of inevitable in the sense of an attempted sex night with family life. I went with something where I'm like, okay, there are more layers to how that ends for the two main characters. Like, what are they feeling? How do they feel about this? How do they feel about each other at the end? And there's more, in a way, there's more romance to it. In another way, there's more complex layers in human connection and emotion and how that all kind of comes out of the wash. So I think the ideal rosé for that third and final ending would be what's called a Tavel, which that is another French style rosé that is Tavel is a region in France, and they only make rosé. They literally don't make any other kind of wine. And it is the reason they only make rosé, and they're known for it. It is one of the richest, most complex, darkest rosés you're ever going to find. And it's not even that hard to find. You pretty much do have to go to a wine shop. But even if it's like Bevmo or Total Beverage or Total Wine, you can find a Tavel. And it is, some people even argue it's not a rosé, it's a light red because it's so dark and concentrated. I still argue. I had my first Tavel only about a month ago or so, and it is beyond delicious. It is amazing, but it is definitely, it tastes more like a rosé than anything else. Like it is a complex, concentrated rosé, but it's good. It's still easy drinking, but it's got there is more going on to it. They make it with a blend of both red and white grapes. It's usually tons of varietals in there. And I got what is a California, it's pretty close to a Tavel, both in flavor and style. And this is a Temecula in California. It is a rosé it's a 100% Merlot rosé. That it was made nice and dark, but it is smooth. There's a lot going on the glass. There's a lot of flavors. There is, I mean, on the nose, it's just like tons of nice red cherry, but I'm bumped for sex night, right? So tons of the cherry aromas, and then lots of great crisp, almost like citrus that's going on underneath. And then it's like water. Like good water with a wonderful aftertaste to it. It's just, it's smooth. There's no bite, but there is complexity to it. And this is one, it comes from a winery called, where'd my bottle go? From Avonsole right here. And it is, and I will also say this was the rosé that was poured at my own wedding, by the way, which I am no longer married, but nevertheless, it's a fantastic rosé. So I'm not letting it ruin that for me. And at the time, it was a very happy occasion and a very happy pour of a rosé. So not only do I connect this exact rosé to marriage and complex relationships, but I absolutely thought it is the closest thing in the States that I've ever found to a Tavel. Without actually finding an imported Tavel. And it is, so this was my chosen pairing. I tried it last night and I was just like, yes, this one. This is the top number one, and it pairs most with the third and final and my favorite ending of the three possible choices. Right before I pass the mic over back to you, history-wise too, the reason rosé, so, sex, relationships, just about as foundational as humankind itself. Like, that at the very least, the sex part was going on from the get-go. We're pretty sure we were clannish almost right from the start. So that's kind of a relationship for, that family unit was sort of something that a lot of mammals have, and that we had as well. And rosé is, as far as we can tell, we think in all probability, the OG wine of humankind, period, across the board. Before technology, before we had developed any sort of superior skills or built things to do different kinds of wine with, you would have had just grapes grown in the wild. They would have had thin, kind of muddled color skins. There wouldn't really have been these deep, dark, purpley red. That all took agriculture. Like, we had to farm and create those grapes really over time. Originally, they would have been muddled, kind of this pinkish, reddish, a little bit on the greenish kind of skins. And it would have just been a quick maceration on the juice with the skins, and done, and then you're done. You got a wine. You couldn't do anything else with it. So it would have created pink wine. pink wine is the OG wine of humankind. It is as foundational to wine as sex is to humanity. And so I also thought, kind of from that story perspective, I'm like, you know what? Rosé, sex night, let's do it. That's all I got.
Good choice.
I was going to say a little behind the scenes tidbit is that the first draft of the script did not have that final ending in it. It only had the 2, and then I got some feedback from it, and they're like, "This has to happen. You can't not put this in the book." So
yes,
I was like, yeah, I kind of knew that already, so I might as well just add a third ending, and it really rounds it. It rounds it off.
It does.
Definitely
You're
does.
going for the more acerbic, more bittersweet style of endings that come with the previous 2, but then this one does I think just again in that realm of possibilities, and even though there is a 4th way it could have ended, that might have been more in the realm of does the audience buy into it? Do you as the writer buy into it? Because that 4th, it's a possibility, but how likely is it ever in this situation? So this one, out of the 4 possible, like the ways in which people could end a sex night either happy or frustrated, I think this one as your 3rd choice was chef's kiss.
It's a happy frustration.
Yes,
I think that's a good way to put it.
I think that is. Yeah.
You'll have to read it to find out what that means.
Exactly. You have to read it. You have to go check it out.
And
it's once again, it's a one-shot 22-page or 23-page. You say 22? 23-page one-shot. Kickstarter going on now. What's the end date on that Kickstarter?
The 26th, I believe.
The 26th.
2 weeks from tomorrow.
All right.
No.
There you go. And by the time
Friday.
this comes out, we'll make sure to put that down below in the description and whatnot when the actual end date is. So you know how much time, because this will probably be a couple days until this actually posts. Probably early next week would be my guess. Monday, Tuesday. We are filming this on a Wednesday. And all right. So Frank, we asked you to bring on a book and a drink to match with it. So please take it away on your end.
Well, the first thing I was thinking was, what book am I going to do? Because I wanted books that I have like physical copies of. And as you were saying before, I'm a huge Alan Moore fan. My favorite graphic novel of all time is From Hell. So I was thinking if I choose From Hell, I could get a nice wine, maybe a deep red to go with that kind of story. I didn't want to do that. So instead I chose Swamp Thing. I'm a huge
Swamp
fan.
Thing. Okay.
I'm a huge fan of his Swamp Thing run. So then when I was grocery shopping today, I'm kind of thinking about what I can do. And I ended up finding some, I mean, you could buy plenty of craft beers that have a picture of like a monster on it. And I wanted something that I felt personally. So I'm a huge fan of Zero Gravity Brewery from Burlington, Vermont.
Nice.
Okay.
They sell it a lot of places, but I was on a bachelor party in Burlington and we did a tour of their brewery. And whenever I'm in Vermont, I try to grab it. So I was thinking Swamp Thing, he's got a connection to the green. Vermont's very green, very naturey, and they put out a beer called Green State.
Awesome.
Good combo.
That was
very good combo.
Yeah, I got to look into that. We've got
that's an IPA.
This is a Pilsner. Their Green State is a Pilsner. They do put out an IPA. I think their IPA is called Conehead. I'm a huge fan of that too. I like the brewery overall. So
gotcha.
I'm more of a quality guy when it comes to my beer rather than a quantity. So
you should be.
Definitely.
That's not something to it's not a thing to be ashamed of. I think the craft beer movement, especially in America, was something that, I mean, it's just been so good. We were, it's kind of just like the what do they even call that? The third wave, fifth wave coffee, whatever it is, like the Starbucks started, and now it's even gone on where we got out of the Folgers era. We actually moved into coffee that was like nice to drink. It didn't have to be drowned in cream and sugar. It's like it was actually good on its own. And same thing with the craft beer movement. We have a lot of wonderful. Me and Dallas were just at a winery, of course, down in downtown LA last weekend for Free Comic Book Day. And it's right across the street from do you remember the name of that brewery, Dallas? The Arts District Brewery, something like that.
That sounds
but
about
it's
right.
something like it's in the Arts District. And it's one of those breweries. I've been in it a couple of times. and they have just an obscene number of beers from
Mhm.
all over the country. And I mean, they're literally like 50, 60 beers kind of a thing that you can choose from. And I'm just like, wow. And I never know enough. Beer is one of those things that I've only dabbled in. So I just don't know enough about it. But yeah, I mean, there is as much going on. I mean, with thousands of grape varietals, maybe not quite as much going on in beer as with wine, but you know, I think with the craft beer movement, it's really coming to its own kind of at that similar type of level and similar level of appreciation.
Those guys that are into it, they love messing around with different stuff. They just playing. Like they really it might come out terrible. They don't care. They just want to try new things, which is how you find great things. It's just not worrying about the end result.
Precisely.
I have a so my family, I was born in Michigan originally, and my family is still mostly up in Michigan. And when I go back to visit them, Michigan is actually an up and coming wine country these days. Mostly with global warming keeps making it better and better. So sad for the planet, good for Michigan wine. And one winery up there, because they're so close to Canada, there's a fruit that's up in Canada, and it's called oh no, am I going to remember the name of this now? The berry, hold on, I have the bottle right here. Give me one sec. It is called
Lingonberry?
Saskatoon berry.
Saskatoon.
So the
Can't get much more
Saskatoon
Canadian
berry,
than that.
exactly. So they're near the Canadian border, and at some point, you know, and it's all like agriculture land and farmland and things like that. And someone had this like overstock of like a truck full of Saskatoon berries, which, by the way, Saskatoon berry is not a berry. It's actually related to the apple. Of all things, but they call it the Saskatoon berry because of the shape, and it looks like a really fat blueberry. But when you bite into it, it's actually kind of mealy, like an apple. And it has almost this like almond flavor to it, which is fascinating. I got some Saskatoon berry jam once and had that, and I was like, this is awesome. But I went to this winery in Michigan, and they were like, someone had a truck full of Saskatoon berries. They didn't. It was like, they didn't have anywhere to put it. So they're like, look, we'll give you an insane deal. And you can get this for like pennies on the crate. And the winery was like, yeah, okay. We'll try it. We'll try and make something out of it. Let's see what happens. So they tried to make a dry wine out of it. It was disgusting. Like it was just absolutely nasty. So they're like, no, God, that doesn't work. So they're like, you know what? Let's do this. Let's fortify it with brandy and age it in barrels extra, extra long and make like a port style dessert wine out of it. And it was magic. And this is a bottle of it, of the dessert wine that they made. Because I went to the winery and tasted it, and I was just like, that is delicious. Oh my God, what is it? And they were like, it's made out of Saskatoon berries. And I was like, that's bizarre. I'm sold. I can't leave without at least one of these to take home with me. So yeah, I love it when whether it's a distiller, a brewer, a vintner, all the different names for all the different kinds of alcohol out there, like when they get playful. And part of the thing is like you try something, it fails, but sometimes even the failures are like, okay, well, what can we do with this failure? It might not be even the end of that. We might be able to mix it with something else or age it extra, extra long, or do something that changes the whole profile. And all of a sudden you realize it's magical in some other form.
You just pretty much described my writing process.
Right? I was about to make that kind of comparison with creativity, just in general.
I've had a lot of stories that I've started and I've shelved just because they didn't work out. But
same, my friend.
I save everything. So there are some times I'm working on something. I'm like, oh, that thing that I wrote as a 14-year-old that I can actually now put into this story. It could work. So yeah, I just play around. That's how you
absolutely
beautiful.
So final bits for you here. One, I did want to ask you the question, if you can answer it. Favorite genre, if you have one. For the person who tries everything, I gotta ask.
I'm a horror guy.
Okay.
And I relate that back to Blockbuster. Blockbuster had so many horror movies. It was
yes.
I was in the mid to late early 90s to kind of mid 90s. full moon movies, so many B horror movies.
God, yes.
And it was just, I grew up in that era. So it's funny now when they come out with horror movies and that are highbrow, supposed to be intellectual.
Right.
I'm
Art
kind of
house
like,
horror, as
I'm
they
like,
say.
I'm like, that's fine, but there's nothing wrong with having something stupid just to be stupid.
No. Well, you know what? I mean, again, I appreciate all of it existing because it gives you like, what are you in the mood for? And it's great that there are slashers, there are slasher movies, monster movies, home invasion movies, torture porn movies. They're all distinct in their way. And then, of course, you have the art house horror. Supernatural, ghost, haunted house. I mean, I love it all.
My favorite thing about Blockbuster was the sci-fi section, because I asked my dad once, I'm like, what is sci-fi? And he's not really a story guy. He's like, it's like aliens in space and stuff. But the truth was, they just threw everything into the sci. If it wasn't drama, comedy, action, or horror, it went into the sci-fi section.
Right.
So
pretty much
was another great section that I
the
loved.
unclassified. Now I think I like that there's sort of this umbrella term now, speculative fiction, that really sort of allows for that, because that was the problem, is like, I think when people did that, like, just to put it in sci-fi, it's like it was speculative. It's like maybe sci-fi would be a little bit of a push, but it was sci-fi adjacent.
Yeah, it was like you had Star Wars and then you had Godzilla. It's
right, exactly. I remember those years, because especially the horror movies art on the DVD and especially back in like the mid to late 80s to early 90s. The art on horror movie they were almost always better than the movies themselves. Like, the art would call to you and you'd just be like, I must watch that. That looks amazing and terrifying. And you'd watch it, and sometimes it would only be kind of okay. And the same thing with paperbacks, horror paperbacks back in the day, when like, God, the art they would put on those books, it made them look so much better than a lot of them were. But then some of them were such gems. I hear you about that whole era.
I love the do-it-yourself nature of horror. A lot of people don't go straight for the comedies or the dramas, or they don't have the budget for a big action thing. But you know what? A couple special effects, fake blood, and it was just how people got into the nitty-gritty of filmmaking.
Right.
And
I think it helps that so many people did super, like, ultra low budget horror. So, the bar was set, and it's like, you can do this. And now other people can do the same level of special effects, and we like it. We enjoy it. And it's like, now we're going to eat it up. And you can do it like, the horror movie Skinamarink that came out not just recently, if you've heard of that one, which seems to be like the next kind of Paranormal Activity thing, where it was like, I think he made it for $10,000 or something like that. It was like peanuts. And I think it's like a Shudder original now. I mean, like, people loved it, but it's all atmosphere. It's just, people basically say, like, nothing happens in the fucking thing. Why do people, the detractors of it are like, but nothing happens. I don't get it. But the people who love it are like, he was really good with the camera. He knew how to shoot these scenes that give you this feeling and this sense of such foreboding and terror that it didn't need to have anything really happen. It didn't need to have anything too in your face. It was all suggested, and with sound effects and with very subtle visual effects. And you can get away with that with horror, because it is about eliciting a response. How you elicit that response doesn't really matter. You don't have to have huge action set pieces. You just have to get people to feel that feeling when they're consuming that story.
Perfect.
Awesome, man.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for being on here, Frank, and best of luck on the final weeks of the Kickstarter. And this one I appreciated through and through. And it's funny because when I saw it was Sex Night, and I was like, oh my God, he's doing a rom-com. Part of me was like, oh, that's not really my thing. I wonder how much I'm gonna like this. I loved it. I
never set out to do that. I wasn't like, I need to make my romantic comedy book. What's it going to be about? I was kind of just like in bed with my wife one day. I'm like, we laugh more than we like actually
do anything, right?
we're just laughing at each other at this point. We can't get anything done.
Right.
Like,
we can barely take it seriously.
Like,
yeah.
Can I make a comic out of this? And I'm like, dare me to make a comic out of this. She's like, do whatever you want.
Well, now I would say whether or not you agree, I say you've made your rom-com at this point. You've done one at the very
Just
Fair
embrace it.
enough.
Just embrace it. It's here to
I
stay.
will. I will. Thanks.
All right,
guys.
Frank. Thanks so much for being
All right,
here.
Frank.
Signing off for now. Good luck with that Kickstarter, and we will be in
We'll
touch.
talk
Take care, my
soon.
man.
Be well,
Bye-bye.
bud.